Righty, guys. So recapping the game that just took place, and this was the Detroit Lions and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Interesting game. Really, Detroit looked like the better football team throughout. Third quarter, the Detroit Lions went out there and, their defense was able to hold Baker Mayfield to a couple of 3-and-outs. And when you go 3-and-out against Detroit, that's going to be devastating for you. So Detroit, in this game, they were able to take a 17-10 lead, but then Baker Mayfield went back down the field, had an incredible drive. I think that, how did that drive end for Baker Mayfield? I don't think it was Rachaad White getting into the end zone. It was it wasn't Cade Otton either. But the Buccaneers were able to march right down the field. They ended up having a spectacular drive with Baker Mayfield when he was feeling it, and they happened to score a touchdown to take it to 17-17. Then the Lions came back and answered that. So the Lions scored, I believe, in the second half. The Detroit Lions scored 3 touchdowns in the second half. And yeah, the Lions scored, and by the way that they scored like 3 consecutive times, I want to say, in the second half. And you can't, as a defense, be that pitiful giving up plays. And then when the Tampa did get a stop, their offense would then go 3-and-out. So they what's it called? They did not play. What they did not do is they did not play complimentary football, the Buccaneers. But Detroit is really, really good. Their scheme is excellent. Brian Branch is a player. Aiden Hutchinson, Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs, they utilize him really, really well. He's well worth, I believe, the 12th pick in the draft or whatever. Yeah, the 12th pick in the draft. So, and then Sam Laporta, getting him, I mean, he looks like the best tight end in this class. That even looks like he could have been picked at the bottom half of the first round. So Ben Johnson's just doing a spectacular job. Now it's up to whoever on that staff who is going to replace Ben Johnson, because if you're Detroit, you want to keep Jared Goff humming at this elite level, and if you lose Ben Johnson, you're going to end up happening what's most likely going to happen like when Bill Belichick left the Giants. And I'm not saying that Ben Johnson's Belichick, but how about when Shane Steichen left Jalen Hurts? When you lose your offensive coordinator, when you lose your play caller and your identity, it's not easy to just go out there and then just replace. I mean, you saw with Mac Jones when Josh McDaniels left, Mac Jones fell apart. It is not easy to create continuity. That's why I do get a lot of the argument from Colin Cowherd and a lot of people like him that you should hire an offensive coach. But there are elite defensive coaches. I believe that Mike McDonald is that good of a defensive coach. Mike Vrabel is more of a culture coach and knows defense. Dan Campbell. So it's just up to you. You have to probably put on your staff a young play caller that is studying Ben Johnson and that can implement things that Ben's going to do and put his own spin on it. So I don't know if Arthur Smith could do that job. I mean, that's the question, because, Dan Campbell is very valuable to Detroit in terms of the Lions, in terms of, getting the culture right, in terms of drafting players, in terms of creating that physical edge, that physical and mental toughness. I mean, when this team beat the Packers last year and they had nothing to play for, it ended up in the long term being fine for the Detroit Lions. It ended up in the long run being good because they ended up, continuing to develop, and this year now they won the NFC North going away. They were the big favorite. They came through, and now they're headed to the NFC title game. The Eagles fell apart, and that's what, really got them to the title game. And then Dallas losing to Green Bay. Green Bay did them a solid. All right. And now they're headed to the NFC Championship. Tampa, late in the game, again with Baker Mayfield, he didn't play perfect. Like, Baker's not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but Baker can maybe be a top 12, top 13, 14 quarterback in the NFL. And if Baker were smart, he would take a 3-year deal that's worth about like $80 million, which, again, is going to pay him one of the least amount of salaries in the NFL, kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo's contract was with the Raiders. So you take on that cheap contract because then not only do you still make $30 million, which is still most NFL players are going to make, but then your team can continue to get good. You can continue to draft. You can then sign some free agents to help out. Like, defensively, that's where they need to get better. Their pass rush has to get better. The linebackers, I like Levante David, but in coverage today, they just were not that good. They need an A1 starting caliber corner. They need great safety play. And then if you're Todd Bowles, you need to continue to bolster the defensive staff, continue to come up with more exotic looks. The defense needs to become more exotic and better. But Dave Canales, we're going to have to see if Canales stays in Tampa. But overall, this was a great season. I thought it would be a total rebuild. Most people, including myself, I'll say it, I was dead wrong on the Tampa Bay Bucs this year. I thought that they would be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. I thought that they'd be towards the top of the draft. I thought the Baker Mayfield that we saw in Carolina and the Baker Mayfield that struggled in Los Angeles at the end there against the Seahawks, I thought that was the final version of Mayfield. When Matt Rule and the horrible Carolina Panthers, who ended up drafting inside the top 8, when they cut Baker Mayfield, when they straight up released Baker Mayfield, and Sean McVay kind of picked up Baker Mayfield at his lowest point, I give McVay credit for this, and kind of turned him around. And maybe he'll do the same for Carson Wentz. But Baker Mayfield, man, what a year. And Dave Canales getting this offense to roll. Godwin had a big year. Mike Evans, I mean, the joke in fantasy football, if you drafted Mike Evans, was who's going to throw him the ball? How are they going to create offense? I mean, Baker Mayfield could be benched for Kyle Trask. They were in a quarterback battle. That's how incredible this season was for Baker Mayfield. That's why he'd be my comeback player of the year, because he was just about out of the league and out of being a starter. And only a team like Tampa Bay with Todd Bowles, a team that you thought was tanking without Tom Brady, that was the only team I thought that, okay, Baker's going to go there. They're going to be horrible. So it just shows you Baker Mayfield, mental toughness, playing with a lot of fun. Baker Mayfield enjoying the game again, playing confident, knowing the scheme not being overly complex, so he's able to go play action, see the field quickly, see field, react, go play action pass, and then Baker Mayfield can pepper the ball into tight windows. But he's got to have, for this Bucs offense to be a championship-worthy team, they got to have more consistent running game. That's the one thing about Canales in this offense, is that Baker needed to do the heavy lifting a lot. Go out there and get some good linemen, okay? And then you're going to have to bolster the defense and continue to put in a good year. But the thing is with Mayfield, if you don't pay him a high quarterback salary, then and you somehow keep Canales, that's what you have to consider, because Todd Bowles is getting up there in age, and that defense was shaky at some points during the season. They had a decent year. Todd Bowles did well as a head coach. He's a very good leader, and he knows defense, but is Dave Canales more valuable? Because who else is getting a lot out of Baker Mayfield? Ben McAdoo didn't get a lot out of Mayfield at all. Stefanski towards the end didn't get a lot out of Baker Mayfield, but Canales and Mayfield together is a partnership that you want to nurture and see grow. And if you're the Glazer family, you need to consider, should the Bucs just hire Canales and not let him get out of the door? Kind of like, that Washington Redskins old coaching staff where they had Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and all of that. I think McVay was a tight ends coach when he went to the Los Angeles Rams. Let me know what y'all think. But Detroit was the better football team today, better offense, better defense, more talent, and they end up winning the game and going to the NFC title game.